Mike Huckabee did some sort of Google Hangout for his campaign. It looks like there are 6 people who showed up for it. He's going to lay out his abortion plan here. Check it out.
As it relates to what could we do, well, I'll tell you, if I were president, there's 2 things I could do. One is to make sure I had an attorney general that would criminally prosecute Planned Parenthood clinics that are violating federal law by selling body parts of human beings. That would get someone's attention. And as far as how to get through to the money, the president could also instruct the Internal Revenue Service through the Treasury Department to conduct a full audit of any of the tax dollars that are given to Planned Parenthood to see exactly how they're spent and to make sure that they are not being used for abortion. Now, again, to me, those are secondary issues. I still think that the bolder and more important and more urgent position is to invoke the constitutional rights of the unborn, recognizing them as persons, expecting lawsuits, expecting extraordinary pushback and, perhaps riots in the street. But I think we've tinkered around the edges so long that we've failed to go back to the original purpose of the Bill of Rights, and we have simply not applied it. And frankly, I don't know of any of us who are pro-lifers who would argue, well, that's really not a person. So the question is, do we believe that the unborn child is a person? If we do, then we ought to act like that is a person and give them the protections that they are due under the Constitution.
Listen to what he said there, because this is actually dangerous. He said we should invoke the constitutional rights of the unborn and recognize them as persons. We should invoke the constitutional rights of the unborn and recognize them as persons. The only problem with that, Mike, is that we already had that debate. We already had that discussion. We already took that through the legal system, through the judicial system, and they made their mind up. And what they said in Roe versus Wade is it's a mixed issue. So the way it works is they split it up back then into trimesters. They said first and second trimester, you get to do whatever you want. If you're the woman, after that, okay, the government can limit it in the different states however they deem appropriate. Now, after that, there's been some abortion cases. We have a new standard, not the trimester standard, but it's the fetal viability standard where it's slightly more accurate in that they say, hey, viability happens around 22 weeks. Here's the way you can regulate it. There's some things you cannot do, you cannot limit, you have a right to an abortion up to a certain point. After that, hey, the states can regulate them however they deem fitting. Mike Huckabee looks at all the case history and he goes, don't care. Don't care. I would invoke the constitutional rights of the unborn and recognize them as persons. In other words, I, the president, would overturn the Supreme Court like this because I happen to disagree with the Supreme Court. Well, okay, Mike, then you're not running for president of the United States. You're running for dictator of the United States. You're running for tyrant of the United States. You're running for fascist leader of the United States. You're running for Mein Führer of the United States. If you get to make all decisions and you don't give a shit about checks and balances, well, then admit that you don't believe in the American system that we've set up here. But you wouldn't admit that. You would pretend to believe in America while at the same time going against the very fundamental practice in our government of checks and balances. And he said we should criminally prosecute Planned Parenthood for, quote, selling body parts. Again, Mike, there's a big problem with your argument here. They didn't do that. See, what they did is people went in there pretending that they were researchers and scientists, like they wanted to cure diseases with fetal tissue. And then when they discussed money, when you see the full unedited version without the scary music, you learn that they're talking about transportation costs. It's pretty expensive to transport fucking fetal tissue to keep it fresh enough in order to do research with it to try to cure diseases. So when they talk about money, all they're saying is, hey, us as Planned Parenthood, we cannot make a profit off this, nor should we, because I would set up a perverse incentive. So we're only, giving this to researchers, and they have to pay for the transportation costs, and that's the end of it. But again, the group went into this pretending to be medical from day one and trying to bring down Planned Parenthood from day one, so it's a total hack job, but he falls for it hook, line, and sinker, and he's like, well, they're selling body parts, but they're not. That's a bullshit claim, yet you keep repeating it. Every fact checker who looked into this said the same thing. That's not true. They're not doing that. But then again, I don't even think it matters, because even if Mike Huckabee knew the facts, he still would repeat that they're selling body parts, because he's working backwards from his conclusion. His conclusion is abortion is wrong no matter what, so if I have to muddle the facts, well, the ends justify the means because I want to get rid of abortion. So what if I lie about what Planned Parenthood is actually doing? And finally, he just said, well, if there are riots in the streets, I don't care. Well, thank you for, again, letting us know how you would be as president. You don't give a fuck about the democratic will of the people. The overwhelming majority of the American people are in favor of abortion in some circumstances. He doesn't care. Outlaw all abortion. I don't care about democracy. I don't care if people riot. Why? Because I'm Mike Huckabee and I would rather be a dictator than be a president. And I still want your vote, even though I'm telling you I'm not going to listen to you, American people. Well, I will not be upset when you lose, Mike.